And there you go, my New Year's wish for you. Who am I? I'm Malcolm Tent. What is this? This is Tent Talks Tunes. As I sit here in my luxurious home studio talking to you live on the dreaded Facebook. And will be archived and preserved in perpetuity from here to eternity, from there to infinity, on my YouTube channel, and of course on my Facebook page. So welcome everybody. Hello, James Pogo from the Arm Delight Rifles. Awesome band. Check them out, people. If you don't already know them, I recommend that you find out. Good people, good band. Hell yeah. Yeah, man. So it's all a matter of perspective. If you're watching me live right now on the Facebook, this is the last episode of Tent Talks Tunes for the year 2020. Lots of awesome alliteration in that sentence. But if you're watching this on YouTube somewhere in the future, it's whatever time it is and whatever place you're at. So it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, I'm just going to sort of cut right down to the chase today because this is a big, big old topic. This is basically summed up as 37 years in rock and roll, and all I got was an astounding career retrospective. And so I'm going to share with all of you people, my frantic fans and loyal listeners and vivacious viewers, some of the stories behind said career retrospective. So here's the background. When it came time for me to decide what to do about putting together a solo album, because as you may know or may not know, I don't know, but you're going to know in a second that I am a musician. I am a rock star. I do like to strap on a guitar every now and then, whether it's an electric bass, an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar. I've been known to sit behind the drums occasionally. I've been known to do noise projects with contact mics and distortion and all that. You know, a musician is only good if the musician can spread its music out to the world. And the best way I know of to do that is to do it with an album. Marvin Haywood, you know what I'm talking about. Thanks for tuning in. So it came time for me to do an album, a solo album, because I've done plenty of records with many of the bands I've been in, but I've never actually done a solo Malcolm Tent record. Excuse me. Wintertime. Hello, Pear. How's it going up there in Scandinavia? So it's time to do an album. What am I going to do? I thought about all the possibilities, you know. It's like all the various bands I've been in. Robopuff Law, hello. All the bands I've been in, all the songs I've written, all the stuff I've done. When I was starting to think about doing the solo acoustic album, the logical decision was to just sit down with my acoustic guitar and play some of my pithy, skeptical, cynical, jaundiced acoustic punk rock songs. You know, why not? That's kind of easy. But let's face it, I had to sit down and decide what kind of demand would there be for something like that. You know, I'm a realist. I've been in this business now, as I mentioned before, for 37 years. And I know for a fact that since I don't have a lot of money behind me, I don't have a big record label behind me. I don't have independent promoters behind me, you know, paying to get me airplay and paying to get me good reviews in the magazines and paying to get my product placed in stores. I don't have anybody paying to get my product placed in movies and TV shows. I'm just one guy. I'm just a dude. So since I don't have all this money behind me and all the extremely cynical, corrupt machinations of the music business making me into a household word or into a marketable brand, I'm well aware of the fact that even though I am, and I'll hope you pardon the profanity. I only use profanity, or at least I try only to use profanity when I'm making a really strong point. And this is a strong point that I'm going to make. Even though I am fucking amazing and I'm really good and I kick ass no matter what. All right? When I go out and I play a show of any sort, I don't do half-assed shows. I do shows that you're going to remember. That's just the way I roll. I can't, to me, it doesn't make any sense to go through all the effort and take all the time to book a show and go out and play it and do it half-assed. You know, there's a lot of work involved. And the way I look at it, if I'm going to invest the time and the effort to book a show and tell people about it and have people come out and see me, I'm duty bound to be awesome. I'm just telling it like it is. Whether you think I'm awesome or not is up to you. All right, I'm not going to tell you that you're supposed to think I'm awesome. I know for a fact that when I'm done with my show, I feel like I've done a good job, and I feel like I've put on a show that was worth people's time to come out and see and or pay money for. That's just the way it is, you know, and I've always firmly believed that if you don't believe you're the best at what you do, there's no point in doing it. You got to get out there and you got to smoke them. You got to be like a human flamethrower and just char them with your amazingness. And that's what I strive to do whenever I hit the stage. But in spite of that, because I don't have the extremely corrupt machine behind me paying people to make me into a household word, my market value is pretty limited. That's just the reality of it. You know, there are times I don't like it, but that's just the way it is. Whatever. I'm still not punching a clock. So when it came time to decide how to make a record, even though it would have been the obvious and most easy thing to do to make a solo acoustic punk rock record, there's only so much of a market for that. You know, and if I'm going to press 500 records, I want to sell 500 records. I don't want to sit on 500 records for my remaining 60 years on the planet. You know, it's the same deal. I'm investing money, I'm investing time. I want to move the damn things. So I was thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And it just kind of twigged to me that it's like, you know, I've been doing this a long time and I've been in a lot of really good bands. And there's even a little bit of that brand recognition that would help sell a couple of records. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we go ahead and instead of me sitting down with my acoustic guitar and playing a bunch of songs and making a record that probably no one's going to buy, why don't I draw on the wealth of material and the wealth of people I've worked with since 1983 and put together something that a lot of people are going to like, or at least that the odds are better that a lot of people are going to like. And once I started digging into it, I ended up having a lot of fun with it. It was a blast going through the vaults and digging out these old tapes and records and, you know, coming across this stuff I had recorded, some of which I'd practically forgotten about, but a lot of it which was really seriously good and I think stands the test of time. And that is how this album came about. You've seen me talking about it a lot. You've seen me hype it. You've seen me shill it. The Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent. Hope it's in the frame. Yep, there it is. It's in the frame. You can see it. It is, as it says on the back, the best of Malcolm Tent, as represented by many of the bands he's been in, 1984 to 2019. And today I'm going to talk about all the bands on side 1, or side A if you wish. 8 of them. And they all have stories, and I think some of the stories are pretty darn good. So why don't we dig into it right now, shall we? We might as well begin at the beginning. And you'll notice that up until now I've been saying 1983, whereas the record cover says 1984. Slight disparity there because the first band I was ever in started in 1983 but didn't release a record till 1984. Okay, I'm notoriously bad with dates and numbers, but I'm actually accurate with that one. Let's drink to accuracy with dates and names and numbers. Let's also take a close-up look at the audience count, and I'll hold this up to the screen so you don't have to see my mouth moving in close up. Nobody wants to see that. Hey, there's Eric and Bronson and Chloe. Hey, Chloe. And Genevieve Michaud and Jason. I got a lot of people tuned tonight. Sandy, hello. Hi, guys. All right, yeah, Sandy, we can take care of you. Anybody who wants one of these, just contact me. I'm happy to hook you up. Okay, so the first band on their side one, track one, is Broken Talent. Look at that, Broken Talent. First band I was ever in. This band has roots going all the way back to high school. John the Baptist from Mystery School Records is tuned in. Cheers, John. We'll be talking about you in a minute. Murray Gelman, Connecticut stalwart. Glad to have you on board. Anyway, my first ever band has roots back to high school, being one of, or I'm going to go boldly and say being the only, the one complete freak, outcast, and weirdo in a high school of about 1,700 students. The only one who liked punk rock. I was it. There wasn't anybody else except me. 1,700 students, all of them normal, and I was the only one who liked punk rock. There might have been a couple of others, but they were heavily closeted. I was the only one who actually could be identified as being a punk rocker. Um, I had one friend in high school, Big Santo, and I ended up turning him on to punk rock. Like I was listening to the radio, and the next day we'd be at first period chemistry class, and he sat behind me and say, "Man, you wouldn't believe it. I just heard this live album by the Ramones," or Dan Carlisle just played this incredible single called TVOD by The Normal. You got to check this out. And so he was the one guy in high school who ended up sort of becoming a fellow traveler with me. And as time went on, we graduated high school, and he went to University of Florida up in Gainesville, and we stayed in touch. And I of course was getting more and more heavily and deeper into punk rock and eventually hardcore. And he was right there with me. We were making our musical discoveries together, and he had the bright idea to start a band. And I thought, great idea. Let's start a band. And it became Broken Talent. And it was his idea to put out a record. It was his idea to start playing gigs. We didn't know what we were doing. We had no idea. We were utterly clueless. We're basically a year out of high school, living in South Florida, of all places. We just knew that we liked music, and it was really his drive to play shows and put out a record that made things happen initially. So we pooled our extremely meager resources, and we made this record, The Immortal Blood Slut by Broken Talent. TPOS number 1, number 001. And in spite of our extremely meager resources, which I've mentioned before, we were able to record a fair amount of stuff. Like, we were able to do this 1 7-inch. We recorded one proper demo, which was going to be a record but never came out. We recorded some rehearsals. We recorded some live shows. And I'm very glad we did, because Broken Talent was very much like lightning in a bottle, or more like an avalanche in a Dixie cup. We were always like right on the verge of falling apart, but we never, or I should say we usually didn't. It could get pretty shambolic. And I'm just really glad we documented this stuff, because I can even go back to it now. Like, I was mixing the original 4 tracks of the demo that we cut with our friend Dave Camp, who very kindly made a 4-track recording of us back in the day when you had to pay a lot of money to pay for a studio session. Dave Camp actually recorded us on his 4-track, and those tapes were never mixed properly. I'm mixing them now, and I'm playing them, and I'm just like, I'm grinning from ear to ear, because it's just so incredibly chaotic and ridiculous. But it's good. Like, these 4 people who barely knew what they were doing, who were like trying to grasp something, where I should say we were reaching for something, but we couldn't get it because our musical chops weren't that good. Our equipment was extremely cheap. The only tape we had to record on was like 50 years old. We're like trying to do all this stuff, but not really able to. But still, we managed to do something that ended up being really cool. And so when it came time to kick off the album, I had to start off with a Broken Talent track. And the one I put on here was a live version of My God Can Beat Up Your God. The studio version, and calling it a studio version is a grand overstatement. We recorded it New Year's Day in our drummer's living room with a couple of mics and an old reel-to-reel tape deck and a reel of extremely old tape. The living room version's on our first record. The live version was recorded on our second ever attempt at a tour, which was in the summer of 1985. I was able to somehow book us enough shows to go from Miami to Albany, New York, and then back. We, of course, starved to death the whole time. We ran out of money at least twice. Slept in the car. We got ripped off. The car broke down. We played shows to 0 people. I mean, you name it. Whatever travail a band can go through on that alleged tour, we went through it. Conversely, we opened up for Black Flag. We opened up for St. Vitus. We opened up for the Freeze, the Cro-Mags, Token Entry. We played really good shows in various spots. At the end of the day, even though we just kind of limped home, feeling like we had been beaten over the head with a club, we achieved a lot. And it was, at the end of the day, an awful lot of fun and absolutely worth doing. And we didn't starve all the way to death. Close, but we survived. And one of the great souvenirs that I got from that tour was a soundboard recording of our second show at CBGB in July of 1985. And through a really long, twisted tale, the tape got lost. Part of it was recovered, and then that part that got recovered was sent back to me. And so the version of My God Can Beat Up Your God that's on the album is from that show at CBGB, the recording of which miraculously survived over the years and made its way back to me. And it's great. It's great for all the right reasons I just mentioned before. It's a complete shambles, but it never falls apart. There's this energy to it, and it just really captured a moment. CBGB in the summer of '85. Us playing a show with the Cro-Mags and Token Entry, a bunch of long-haired weirdos from South Florida. I mean, it was really something. It was really something. And by the way, this is a Broken Talent T-shirt I'm wearing. Let's see if we can get a close-up of this. Look at that. Look at that silk screen and that extremely faded writing on it. This is the only Broken Talent T-shirt ever made. And I'm not saying that it's the only design we ever made. I mean, this one shirt, this one single T-shirt is the only Broken Talent T-shirt in existence. This is it. The one. And I'm wearing it, and it's here. And in answer to Bronson's question about was it the same El Duce who was in the Mentors, no. Our drummer at the time was named Shane, and Shane had this heavy-duty Mentors fixation. So as he did when you're of that age, he was calling himself Shane Sick Pup El Duce Hansen. It's very funny at the time, and it's actually kind of funny right now, Youth. Ah, youth. The things you can do. Not thinking that anybody's ever going to know or care 35 years down the road. Isn't that great? 35 years down the road, just because I dropped a cassette in the CBGB recorder and paid them $5. It exists on vinyl now. I just love that. So that was Broken Talent, my first ever band. And they open up the album. I'll mention, too, that there is an anthology cassette that I've released on my label TPOS. This is TPOS number 17, the Broken Talent Good, Bad, Awful anthology, which has got, look at how blurry that is. but you can kind of see it. Basically everything worth releasing that we recorded that I was able to get my hands on at the time. That is, of course, available through my Discogs and eBay. It's great. Second band I was ever in was after I moved to Connecticut. Moved to Connecticut in late 1986. And, as is so often the case, didn't have any real plans or designs on starting another band. I'm the new kid in town. I, don't know what's happening, don't know anybody. But I'm getting all tongue tied here. As happens, when you open up a record store, people walk in the front door. And there's the key to the equation. People walk in the front door, and one day a guy named Jim Roberto walked in the front door of Trash American Style over at 20 Station Road in Brookfield. And it turns out that Jim was a guitar player, and he was sick and tired of glam metal, and he was sick and tired of hair metal. He was playing in these bands, and there was all hair metal and glam and puffy hairspray and, tight leather and spandex and whatnot. And he was just done with it. He didn't want to do that anymore. He wanted something new. He wanted something different. He kind of vaguely had the idea that he wanted to do some kind of punk rock. And I thought, yeah, punk rock, that's me. I play bass. Let's do a band. And he said, all right, cool. I know a guy who plays drums. Let's be a band. So we started a band. And the band was called the King Hatreds. Yes, the King Hatreds. Let's see if my fancy new camera will come into focus. We're waiting for it to focus. I paid $80 for this camera. I want to see some focus. Whatever. You can read it anyway. We formed this band called the King Hatreds. And to answer Justin's question, what TPOS number is Killed by Florida? It's not a TPOS release. That is technically an Utbe Eglay. An Utbe Eglay. It was an unauthorized release of really excellent Floridian stuff that some people put out. It's a great record. I think that if you can find a copy, you should definitely get it. There is a Broken Talent track on it. The people who put it out did actually send me a few copies, which I thought was pretty cool of them to do. But if you want a really great overview of the South Florida scene in the late 70s to just about mid 80s, Killed by Florida, it's a darn good record. Get it. But I didn't do it. It's not mine. I almost wish I could take credit for it. But anyway, we did this band called the King Hatreds. And the King Hatreds, we're getting into the Connecticut part of the story, is kind of a key band because, as mentioned before, Jim Roberto, who is hands down one of the most astonishing guitar players that anybody's ever heard, and one of the most unworldly guitar players I've ever played with, he was getting out of hair and glam, trying to get into something else. I was from Florida, still very much steeped in punk rock and hardcore, but inevitably moving forward from that base, So we were both kind of going somewhere looking for a sound. And our drummer, Bart, was the glue that held everything together while we kind of were on this quest for musical certainty. And Jim's playing was, even then, getting really far out. He was graduating really fast from standard glam metal and hair metal into something really chaotic and really special. So no matter how far out he got, and no matter how much I was sort of pushing the limits, Bart was always there to just keep it going. So it was kind of like Broken Talent, a lot of times verging on total chaos, but it never fell apart. I'll say that. Broken Talent did fall apart sometimes, but King Hatreds never fell apart. So we had all this like chaos and complete mayhem, especially centered around Jim's absolutely volcanic guitar style, hanging together because of the steadiness of the drums and to a large degree the bass. And The King Hatreds eventually did implode, hence the name of the cassette, The King Hatreds Implode. And Jim later went on to be in Head. That is H, I can't do it, H-E-D, Head. And if you've seen a few episodes of Tent Talks Tunes, you've heard me talk about Head. Head were one of those bands that really, honest to God, should have just paved the entire planet over with their asphalt. Head were the band that really should have just taken this planet and cracked it open like an egg and made an omelet out of it. Head were a force of nature. And a large part of that was based around Jim's guitar style, which by the time he joined Head was just literally out of this world. You know, the beer chord, the effects, I mean, unbelievable. Just unbelievable. So, first of all, look up Head. Okay. H-E-D, Head. And remember that the King Hatreds were the direct antecedent of Head. And the King Hatreds were also the direct antecedent to my next band. And I would like to say hello to Gavin and Lucy over in Nottingham, England. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I played a show with their awesome band, the Madeline Rust, a little more than a year ago with my friend Tim Holhouse. Second UK tour, loved it. So thanks, Gavin, for tuning in. I hope to see more shopping lists sooner than later. A toast to the rock and roll bands of Nottingham, England. Where was I? Oh, yes, King Hatreds, crucial linchpin connector band between the past and the future. Jim Roberto went to be in Head after this, and I, as I was continuing to explore the possibilities of bass guitar, ended up falling in with another weird cast of characters, which would end up being my third proper band. Once again, the story begins with this total weirdo who walked in the front door of Trash American Style at 20 Station Road in Brookfield. We established a rapport. We're talking, we're hanging out. And he said his name was Bob. And Bob had this idea for a band that was complete and utter nonsense on purpose. Absolute nonsense. A band that would make no sense whatsoever. A band that was silly, a band that was disposable, a band that was noisy and chaotic and cacophonous, a band that was utterly random, and he wanted to call it the Bunny Brains. I said, all right, sounds like a lot of fun. Let's do it. So I would end up going over to Bob's aunt's house in Darien, Connecticut, where he had a little basement set up with one of the first 4-track cassette recorders I'd ever seen. He had this Tascam 4-track cassette recorder, which was a really exotic commodity at the time. We're talking about 1988. A 4-track cassette recorder, man, nobody had those things, but he had one. And so that opened up all kinds of possibilities for just dicking around and making a lot of silly, nonsensical, disposable, worthless noise, which was the entire point. You know, it was supposed to be absurd. And hey, Kimberly Taylor Cross. Hi, thanks for tuning in. Good to see you on the internet. So we're making this ridiculous, disposable, instantly nonsensical noise on his 4-track. And he was a student at SUNY Purchase. So sometimes we would go to SUNY Purchase and just wander around the campus and find an empty classroom somewhere and set up the 4-track recorder, and we'd have like maybe a guitar or some pots and pans, or you know, I'd be beating on a chair with some coat hangers, and you know, his friends would kind of wander in and they'd be making noise, beating on tables and strumming the guitar. We recorded all this stuff. We were always recording this really ridiculous, asinine noise. And that's kind of how the entire concept of the Bunny Brains began. It was based around a core of me and Bob, but anybody could join in because it didn't matter. It was silly. It was irrelevant. It was irreverent. It was irrespective. It was just for the moment, we're going to document it and then move on to the next thing. And we're just going to keep on spewing this stuff out. And we're just going to have fun with it. And anybody can join in. Anybody can be a bunny brain. That was the concept of the band. As Bob initially came up with it and as he and I brainstormed it and finessed it and, made it into a reality. Toast to Bob for coming up with the idea. After a while, I brought in this other guy, Dan Bunny, because he was doing his thing under the name of Egg the Poet. And it was kind of similar. It was very off the cuff, it was spontaneous, it was improvised. And what he was doing with words was very similar to what Bob and I were doing with music. So I thought, all right, let's join forces. And so that's how the original core trio of the Bunny Brains came together. And the concept never changed. It was the core players with an ever evolving, revolving, devolving cast of misfits, miscreants, ne'er-do-wells, people who just wanted to make a bunch of noise. So they would all sort of coalesce around us, and it was almost kind of like what I was talking about with the King Hatreds. We would hold it together because we had a very good rapport and a very good chemistry together, the three of us. We'd hold it together, and everything else would just kind of swirl around us. And it, believe it or not, almost always worked. It was very rare that it didn't work. I mean, we were casting spells. There was a lot of really intense magic being woven with the bunny brains. And as time went on, Bob eventually he moved away somewhere, and that just left me and Dan Bunny. And so between the two of us now, all this stuff coalesced, and all these people were coming and going, and they might last with the bunny brains for one taping session. I won't even say recording session because it was usually not that formal. Just one get together around the cassette deck, or maybe one gig, or maybe people would stay with us for years. We eventually got the infamous Sweet Meat Pete Beat, aka Pete Partenio, became our regular drummer because we would get together and jam in his living room, and he'd be hanging out or running the tape, and we never really had a steady drummer until one day he was there, some drums were there. I said, Pete, I want you to play drums. He said, I don't know how to play drums. I said, Pete, you'll figure it out. And he did. And he became a core regular member of the group. So we would just wing it, all improvised. We never knew what was going to happen from one minute to the next. We recorded everything, and a lot of damn good stuff came out of it. So, of course, as it often does, came time to make a record. And I don't have a copy of the record here with me. I think I might have one copy of the first Bunny Brains 7-inch down in the vault somewhere, but I don't have it here with me. Which might be why when it came time to put a Bunny Brains record or a Bunny Brains track on the Multiple Moods of Malcontent, I chose one of the sides of our debut single, which was called On the Floor Again. It is a great song. And it's kind of, it's no secret that there are some people in the Bunny Brains I don't get along with anymore, that I haven't talked to in a very long time. And it's kind of ironic because I've probably been in bands with 100 different people over the years, and I'm still friends with all of them. And in the Bunny Brains, there was probably 100 different people who came through the band, but there's a few of them I'm not friendly with anymore. It's the nature of the beast, I suppose. But in spite of that, I am never going to deny the fact that we made some damn good, chaotic, discordant, completely rockin' kick-ass music together, and I can still listen to it with absolute glee and joy at the fucking mayhem. See, I used the F word. That's how strongly I feel about it. The mayhem and the chaos that we delivered with a killer rhythm section and a good, strong beat. All this just insanity held together, and all of it improvised, and all of it totally rockin'. So the Bunny Brains, the fourth band I was ever in, ended up being, I'm sorry, third band I was ever in. Remember, I told you I'm bad with numbers. Third band I was ever in, side one, track 3 of my first solo album, The Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent. Whew, what a story, man. We're only like up to 1988 at this point. But I'm not going to try to tackle the entire album, as I mentioned earlier. I'm only going to do the side one of the album, the first 8 bands. So we're almost halfway there. And Jennifer Catucci is correct. Sometimes dysfunction creates magic. If I ever do another Bunny Brains anthology album, that's going to be the title of it. Dysfunction creates magic. A big toast to Jennifer Catucci for coming up with that one. That's good. I love it. I, of course, got to mention, too, besides the track on the album, as I mentioned, we recorded everything. So I got tons of Bunny Brains releases that are out on cassette. You know, we've got this isn't relevant right now, but the Funny Bunny Christmas, we got together and recorded a Christmas album, 90 minutes of improvised Christmas songs. Here's a cassette version of the vinyl double LP that we released, TPOS number 69. One of the many, many, many live shows that we released. A bunch of outtakes from the double album session featuring one of our guitar players, Warren the Thief, Warren Kennedy, who was in the band for a while. Hope you guys can see his outline, his silhouette, his shadow. That was taken outside of the Boardwalk Teen Club in Brewster the one time we played there. They made it known that we were not welcome to come back. One of our many, many, many live shows. I was very inspired by Throbbing Gristle and the fact that they had a suitcase with 24 hours of live Throbbing Gristle. I totally ripped off that idea and tried to do the same thing with the Bunny Brains, but it ended up being like this 100-hour megalith. So now I just have the cassettes available individually live. So I stand by them. We rocked. We were good. Okay, next band. I'm not really at liberty to divulge much about Bobby. There have been a lot of rumors about Bobby and who's in Bobby and who constitutes Bobby and what is Bobby. All I know is that I swore a vow of secrecy. That's the front of the Bobby Flexi disc that came out on TPOS number 107. Clear the corner. Clear the corner. Some people say that maybe Bobby really is nothing other than a piece of clip art. You know, maybe Bobby never really exists. Ed. Maybe Bobby is just a figment of our collective imagination. Maybe Bobby really is a couple of real people singing in very deliberately bad British accents. Maybe Bobby really is just a story. It's the story of 2 British cops who go on a holiday to Los Angeles and learn how to kill people more efficiently, and then take that knowledge back to Old Blighty and apply it to innocent British civilians. Hence some of the song titles. I Will Kill You With My Club, Kill 'Em Then Cuff 'Em. Oh yeah. It's quite a concept. Quite a concept. A lot of people like Bobby. Well, I mean, you know, there is a Bobby track on my solo album that might give away some of the mystery. The infamous Clean the Club. I'll quote you the lyrics to Clean the Club by Bobby. By Bobby. The song Clean the Club. All right, suspect. It's as I suspect. You've bloodied my club. Now clean the club. Clean the club. That's a pretty goddamn good lyric. And if I'm associated with it at all, I'm very proud to be. We'll just leave it at that. Another toast to Bobby. Gavin and Lucy, if you guys are still watching over there in Nottingham, England, don't reveal the secrets of Bobby. Please. Shh. Mum's the word. All right, we're jumping ahead a little bit now. If the first Broken Talent single was TPOS number 1, I thought it was only appropriate for the 200th TPOS release. That's 200 TPOS releases to be me. This guy right here, Malcolm Tent, the man of action. What better way to celebrate 200 releases on my label than to release a record by myself? And once again, realizing that the name Malcolm Tent, brutally honest, I'm admitting it, only has so much market value. But if I can hitch my wagon to a name that has some market value and do it legitimately by releasing a session that I cut with somebody who I absolutely admire and respect, if not absolutely worship, then all the better. I actually have a visual aid here. I have to reach over to my office wall and take it off of the wall. All right, so I'm going to disappear for just 1 second here while I remove the visual aid from the wall. And I'm going to take the visual aid out of its frame so you guys can see this very clearly. And you can look up on YouTube. The video of this event does exist, and it is on YouTube. The greatest 8.5 minutes of my entire life. If I had to define any concentrated, very short period of time in my life and pick out what was the very best 8.5 minutes of my entire life, it would be that fabled day at the Beachland Ballroom in Cleveland, Ohio, when I found myself on stage, and the picture itself is a little bit blurry, so we're not going to get too bent out of shape. Found myself on stage with, over here, Scott Orsi, the leader and keyboard player of the Devo tribute, the Spud Boys. Over here, Jerry Casale, that's Gerald V. Casale, the undisputed boss and conceptualist, bass player, lead singer, songwriter, and producer of Devo, and the very honorable David Kendrick, who was Devo's drummer from 1987 to 1996. And then you see that guy right there, that's me on guitar. I found myself on stage with 40% of Devo's second lineup playing in front of an audience of rabid spuds in Cleveland, Ohio. And we did a version of Beautiful World. It lasted 8.5 minutes. And after that one, I could have just flapped my arms and flown to heaven. And it would have been fine. You know, I mean, I've done a lot of goddamn good stuff since then. But at that very moment, I could have swum to the moon. No problem. No problem. That would have been an excellent period on my sentence if it had just ended right there. No worries. So yeah, my God, me and Devo's rhythm section. Pretty cool. Leading up to that, there were some rehearsals for the performance. Knowing that there were going to be rehearsals, and knowing that David Kendrick, the drummer of Devo from 1988, or so 1987 to 1996, was going to be there, and he and I had, you know, corresponded a little bit previously. I worked up the nerve, the courage. I screwed up my nerve and asked David Kendrick if he would like to back me up on a couple of songs when I played my solo acoustic set. And he said, yeah, sure. I was like, I can't believe this. I cannot believe this. Because I did play an acoustic set this very same day. And David Kendrick agreed to back me up. And it just so happened that in my solo acoustic set were two of the songs by Devo that he played on from their album Smooth Noodle Maps. a song called Devo Has Feeling Too, Devo Has Feelings Too, and a song called Spin the Wheel. They were already in my set. So David played on them originally. Simple matter to have him back me up when I did it. And he agreed to do it. Wow. So come day of rehearsal, it was a long day of rehearsals, primarily centered around Jerry of Devo and Bob Lewis, who was the other co-founder of Devo, basically them hashing out the parts that they were going to play at this event. And then the Spud Boys, who I was playing guitar for, working on our Devo tribute set. So it was a very long day of rehearsals and really concentrated and intense. And when everything was finally over, after the Spud Boys after we'd gone through our thing and Jerry had gone through his thing with Bob Lewis and Jerry had gone through preparations for this, everything was over and done. And David was there, and I was ready to go. I thought we were done. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But David said, "So did you want to go through those two songs?" I was like, "Yeah, I would like to do that very much. I would very much like to do that." So put the guitar back on. David sat down behind the drums, and he said, "Okay, what do you want to start with?" And first of all, I'm like, "Oh my God, David Kendrick's asking me what to start with? Caramba!" Whew, whew, whew. But I held it together. I did not freak out. He said, "So what do you want to start with?" I said, "Spin the wheel." He said, "Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4," and we were on. Just like that. No, well, do you know it? No, are you ready? No, are you in tune? No, no, nothing. It's like, okay, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, just like that. And we had never been in the same room together with instruments before. That's how serious a player this guy is. We ran through it. He said, "How'd that sound?" I said, "That sounded pretty good." He said, "Okay, so what's next?" I said, "Devo Has Feelings Too." He said, "Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, we're on." I mean, just like that. We play it. He said, "Okay, is that it?" I said, "Yeah, I guess." "Okay, great. See you tomorrow." That was it. That was the sum total of the time that David Kendrick and I spent playing together. As we all know, I'm obsessive about recording stuff. So I, of course, recorded our little rehearsal. And the recording came out pretty good. And you know me, the wheels are always turning. I'm always thinking about releases because I love releasing records. It's one of my great joys in life. Just love it. Love it. So I had this recording, and I said, I got my 200th release coming up. I want this to come out. So I wrote to him. I said, "David, do you mind?" He said, "Will you send me a copy?" I said, "Yes." "Okay, we're on." Just like that. And so that's how this was born. The Malcolm Tent Power Duo featuring David Kendrick. A release called Two Smooth Noodle Maps, because the album that the songs are from was Smooth Noodle Maps. He plays drums on it. He arranged them. There it is. And this is a hyper limited edition hand-lathed record. I only make them in batches of 25. But I'm so proud of it and so happy and just so amazed that it actually happens that I put our version of Spin the Wheel on the album. And the record is in glorious lo-fi mono, and I love the way it sounds. The album is a totally different mix in hi-fi stereo. So, completists rejoice. If you want to hear it all, you got to get them both. But that's the story of me playing with Devo's drummer. And he also played with Sparks and Gleaming Spires and Bates Motel and Empire of Fun. I mean, the dude's just like, he's a pretty major player and a heck of a nice guy. So, David Kendrick, if you're out there, I'm going to drink to you right now. Beautiful Danbury tap water. All right, gang, we're past the halfway mark, so if you're still with me, you're still with me. We still got a few more stories, not too many, just a few. The next one also goes back to the front door of Trash American Style, which by this time was located at 12 Mill Plain Road in Danbury, Connecticut. And there were these kids from Brewster, New York, who would come in all the time. All the time. And they were young. They were young kids. And they were just like kind of like wide-eyed and wanting to know about everything. They wanted to know about stuff like the Mentors and the Misfits and Gigi Allen and just punk rock in general. And so, of course, it was, my job to fill them in. And so, they would come in all the time, soaked up all this stuff. They're buying as much music as they possibly can. And eventually they get together and they start a band. The band was called They Hate Us. Nice, local band, cool. Didn't think too much about it. They'd come in all the time and they'd give me their latest demo or their latest CD. They'd play live. I'd go see them. They were nice kids. I liked them. And They Hate Us were just a really fun band. And they went through lots of permutations and lots of lineup changes. And, they just never stopped doing it. They never stopped. And it just reminds me of one of my favorite bromides. This applies to me as well. People say, Tent, how do you do it? Kind of the same way that They Hate Us did it. The first half of succeeding is just showing up. The second half of succeeding is just continuing to do it. Just keep going. Don't stop. Just keep on going. At some level, you're going to succeed, even if it's like what I was talking about earlier. If I don't have the corporate sponsorship and the backers and the paid radio play and all that fucking horse shit. See, more profanity. Even if you don't get that, you still get to do what you want to do and be an artist and express yourself and make music and play shows and release albums. Just show up and keep doing it. And so They Hate Us kept doing it. And a few years back, I got a call from the rhythm guitar player Byron, and he said, Malcolm Tent, would you join They Hate Us? And I was like, oh, well, I don't know. I'm kind of a busy guy, and I got a lot on my plate. I don't know if I got time for a band, And he kept bugging me. And I finally said, all right, I'll try it out. Why not? Because I liked the dudes. And it was also pretty cool because by this time, 20 plus years into the story of They Hate Us, their lead singer was now also the lead singer for the Murder Junkies. And he is, to this day, the longest serving vocalist of the Murder Junkies. He's the guy who got them from playing all Gigi Allen cover songs to playing an almost exclusively all original set, and to record new music and be in the studio and do albums and be a real working original band. That's all P.P. Duvet, the lead singer of They Hate Us. And on top of that, their drummer is the infamous Dino Sex, the drummer for the Murder Junkies since 1991. So I got to admit, that was part of the allure. It's like not only did I like these guys, but I had a chance now to play with Dino and see what P.P. Duvet was like on stage and in rehearsal as a guy who'd been fronting the Murder Junkies for all these years. I thought, this is cool because these guys are now really seasoned and they know what they're doing. And I'm seasoned too. This guy, oh, he's seasoned all right. Let's see what we can do. And we clicked. It worked. It worked really well. We started writing songs almost immediately and hammering them out. And once again, recording them. And after a while, Byron went his way. So now They Hate Us consists of myself, P.P. Duvet, Dino Sex, and our friend Naughty Fred Dahmer. Some people know him as Mike Dietz, but he'll always be Naughty Fred to us. He's from this really cool band called RBNX from New York State. So it's the four of us now. And as is inevitable, we decided to record an album, which we did, which is out on the very fine Mystery School Records. It's called Get Back in the House. And I always take pains when I talk about it to say that we came up with the concept of get back in the house long before it was trendy to do so. And as you can see, even with this crappy focus, when we say get back in the house, we mean something maybe a little bit different than the meaning it's taken on now. So I've been with They Hate Us now for a few years. We've played a whole bunch of shows, written a whole bunch of stuff, and I really enjoy playing with these guys. PP is a real good dude. Dino is an absolutely unique and genuine, legit personality, as you can only imagine. There is no one on this planet like Dino, and I'm very happy to be in a band with him. It's a lot of fun. And so I, of course, had to put a song by They Hate Us on the Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent, and that is an alternate mix of one of the songs on this album called Abudadeen. On the album, it's called Husker on this album, it's called Husker Heenan. On my record, it's called Abudadeen because it was still a work in progress. So very happy, very proud to be in a band with these guys. Looking forward to playing a lot more shows when we're allowed to play shows and tour and do the whole thing because we're a pretty good unit. We're a pretty tight unit. PP's a great front man. Mike Dietz is a really wild bass player, and of course Dino is Dino. And I'm up there slogging away on my electric guitar. You know, I didn't want to do it, but I'm doing it. So They Hate Us. Look for us soon, everywhere. Get the album on Mystery School Records. I stand behind this album 175%. Mystery School is a great label, and this is a great album, and that's the story so far of They Hate Us. So I got two more, a mere two more, and I'll let you guys go. One of my project bands that I've had going off and on for a long time is called BB Gun. The original concept of BB Gun was I wanted to get players from the Bunny Brains together, and instead of doing the totally improvised chaos that the Bunny Brains do, to write and record some songs for them and play them as a band, with actual written songs, which we never did in the Bunny Brains. And it happened. It morphed through a number of different permutations. And to make a somewhat long story somewhat shorter, a really key event happened to me in my life in the year 2010, in the year 2010. I was already working on the second BB Gun EP because we did one EP featuring myself, Raymondo of the Bunny Brains on guitar, this guy Eric, Lucky Zwenskis, Eric, who had played drums with the Bunny Brains, on drums, and the inimitable Bibby Gunn on vocals. So it was basically three Bunny Brains and Bibby Gunn recording this music. So it was pretty close to the original concept. Came out great. I loved it. I love it to this day. It's a great record. Bibby Gunn does not sing in a rock and roll style. She's a classically trained lyric soprano vocalist. So she's got this really non-rock and roll operatic approach to her singing, which is absolutely unique. It doesn't sound like regular rock and roll. I love it. So as time went on, I started working on material for a second BB Gun project. And I'm just letting the ideas come to me, and I'm just sort of letting it happen as it happens. So it's taken a long time, like literally years. Literally years. And I finally got about 7 songs together and thought, okay, this is cool. We've got 7 songs. Let's do like a mini album. Let's start recording it. This was like around 2008, 2009 when we started working on the second BB Gun album. And it's just sort of going along the way it goes, whatever. And then in 2010, one of the most cataclysmic events to ever happen to me, and I've written about this in detail. If you scroll back on my Facebook page, you'll see the whole story of it. The cataclysmic event was that I had my heart broken. And if any of you out there have ever had a broken heart, you know, you know, you know. So here I am, like, had my heart picked up like it was a glass paperweight and thrown to the ground as hard as it could be, and it just shattered into a million damn pieces. And when my heart shattered, it opened up all this stuff. And all this stuff had to be expressed somehow. And what better way to express it than through music? So my 7-song mini album, because I was completely heartbroken, ended up becoming this 22-song huge epic of ultimately redemption. And I ended up releasing it as a CD. It's not called La Serena, it's called August. If Malcolm Tent's got a masterpiece anywhere, this is it. BB Gun, August. It's on Bandcamp, it's on Discogs, it's on all that. You can get it directly from me. This is my magnum opus, August by BB Gun. Broken heart, resulting in the best music I've ever recorded and written in one lump sum on one album ever. So of course I had to put some BB Gun onto vinyl, and perversely enough, I put a track from the first BB Gun record on there instead of something from August, because August fits together as a piece. The track I put on there on my album was from the first album. It's better as a standalone track. It's all good. And it all comes from, if not the broken heart, then at least the gut. And BB Gun is one hell of a singer. And I've got my good pal Jennifer Catucci tuned in. She was the original singer for BB Gun. She was the first one I chose to sing for BB Gun, because I always had this idea of a female vocalist who could really sing. And Jennifer was the singer for Windfall, which is a band you should check out. Windfall with Jennifer on vocals. Awesome stuff. And yeah, for whatever reason, I don't even remember why it didn't work out, but for some reason it didn't work out, and I ended up with BB Gun, who ended up being perfect for the project. So it all worked out beautifully. It was all great. And Jenny and I just said Jenny, sorry about that. Jennifer and I are still good friends today. So Mazel Tov to all the singers of BB Gun. I drink to you. So we got 8 tracks by 8 bands on side 1 of the Malcolm Tent solo album. I just talked about 7. Here is the 8th. This is where we get to reach the end of the side and flip the record. You might notice the credit on there. Side A, track 8 says, "The Residents, for all intents and purposes." What the hell does that mean? The Residents, for all intents and purposes. What does that mean? The Residents, for all intents and purposes. Let me explain. The Residents, who you might know because of the iconic imagery that they have been foisted on the world since 1976. Actually, not since 1972. The Residents, a couple of years back, announced that they were recording an album called I Am a Resident. And they were soliciting donations of music and material for them to consider putting on an album. And it was diabolically simple. You pay $10, you register with the project I Am a Resident. In exchange, they send you an exclusive track that's not available anywhere else in the world, and you get to upload a song for them to consider using on the album. I thought, great. If nothing else, I get a Residence, an exclusive Residence song. That's cool. So I put something together. I recorded a song, worked long and hard on it. I decided to do a mashup of 2 of my favorite Residence songs, The Shoe Salesman, and Life Would Be Wonderful. So I cooked up a version of it, recorded it, thought it came out great, uploaded it to the I Am a Resident platform, and then forgot about it. Just totally forgot about it because I saw this documentary on the Monkees once. And the documentary was on about these dudes who had auditioned for the Monkees but didn't make it. It's a really cool documentary. I think it's called Meet the Monkees. And they were talking to one of these guys who had auditioned, and he said the only way you're ever going to survive in Hollywood if you're doing auditions is to just do the audition, give it the best shot you possibly can, and then just forget about it. Move on to the next one. Don't sit by the phone waiting for it to ring. Don't think about it. Just forget that audition forever and move on to the next one. So of course, if the phone does ring, then it's like a pleasant surprise. So that's the way I approached this residence thing. I recorded the tune. I was very happy with the way it came out. I submitted it, and I just forgot about it. I really did. I just did. I had my exclusive track, whatever. I got my $10 worth. So you imagine my very pleasant surprise when a few weeks later I check in my email and there's an email from the residents. And they said, would you send us the stem tracks for the song that you submitted? I said, oh, they want the stems, huh? That's the multi-tracks, the individual multiple tracks. Each constituent part of the song that I recorded. They wanted the actual source tracks. I thought, okay. All right. So I got them together and I uploaded the tracks, like each individual organ track, each individual vocal track, each individual, all the individual tracks that are mixed together to make a final product. They wanted those individual tracks. So I sent them. And forgot about it, or at least tried to forget about it, because now we're a little bit further along in the process than I ever thought I was ever going to get. This is just a little bit exciting, So I couldn't really forget about it, but I did put it in the back of my mind. I just put it in the back of my mind. Just because they want my stems doesn't mean they're actually going to do anything with it. But they at least liked it enough to want to hear how the song was broken down. That's still pretty cool. So it's in the back of my mind. And I'm minding my own business, just doing my own thing, blah, 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 yak, 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 yak. And some time elapses, and I'm checking my email one day, and there's an email from the residents. And it's got a link to download the album I Am a Resident. I was like, oh, they finished the album. I wonder why they're sending me a download for the whole album. That wasn't part of the deal. Couldn't be. Couldn't be. Impossible. Nah, couldn't be. Well, let's download it and give it a listen. What the hell? So I download it, give it a listen. I decided to put it on and play it in the background while I was doing some work, packing orders and stuff and shipping and whatnot. It's always good to have music playing in the background, so why not? The residents just sent me a free copy of their album. I'll listen to it. Not hoping anything. Really, I wasn't hoping anything. But I'm playing the album, working, packing, shipping, and then this track comes on, and I was like, I heard something very familiar. Pricked up my ears and sprinkle me with salt and change my name to Ritz Cracker. But goddamn, the residents used my submission in their album. Holy cannoli. That put a big old grin on my face. My submission is in this song for maybe a grand total of 30 seconds. Whatever, but they used it! Out of the who even knows how many people who submitted tracks, mine made the final cut. Made me very happy that day. Made me very happy to this day. So I reached out to their record label and asked if I could license that track to put out on TPOS. They said no. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep it as an integral part. I said, that's fine. But I really wanted that represented somehow on my label. So I thought, well, heck, why don't I just release the original track I recorded, which was a mashup entitled, as you can see right there, The Wonderful Shoe Salesman. It's the shoe salesman and life would be wonderful. As I recorded it and sent it to the residents, that's the track they liked. That's the track that they dissected and used for their track. Okay, so they used it. It was part of a project called I Am a Resident. And so by extrapolating the entire concept and using the God-given right that the residents bestowed upon me to say that I am a resident, I put that song on this album, and indeed, for all intents and purposes, it's The Residents. So my version of their two fantastic songs are what close out side one of the Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent. And that wraps up the first part of my 37-year career retrospective. The other part of it is represented on side two. We'll get to that eventually. I'm going to do a lot of writing about that and posting and whatnot before I get on the internet with Tent Talks Tunes to give you the long-winded spoken word version of the songs the stories behind the songs. So that's going to happen sometime in the year 2021. I think that the odds have shown that we are going to make it to 2021. Fingers crossed, eyes crossed. We're really close, guys. We're really close. There are a lot of naysayers out there who said it couldn't be done, but as of this writing, we are standing on the verge of getting it on with 2021. So I look forward to seeing every single one of you out there in the new year. And I can't thank you enough for tuning in and watching me yap about this stuff. I love it. I love you. I hope you love this. So, as always, check me out on Discogs and eBay. Look up TPOS. That's the name of my label. That's TPOS. What can I say? It's a great label. I'm up to 225 releases right now, and they're all good. I love them all. So do that. And yeah, everybody, stay sane. And I do hope to be back in about 167 hours' time. So, until we meet again, this is indeed Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.